But moving over to high school stuff now. Uh, Big nugget for Coach Hawkins at Normal West. He earned his 600th career win in their 8-0 win over Champaign Central last week. I actually saw a picture on, I think it was Saturday or maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember exactly. They painted 600 behind home plate for him on the field, which is really cool. So congrats to Coach Hawkins on that. I know we mentioned some coaches last week that had some big career wins like that as well.
Yeah, and getting into it. I think there's been a couple milestones floating around. I saw somebody just got to 500 wins as well. That was tweeted out. If I can find it, I'll make a mention of it here before the podcast is over. But new number one, looking at the Power 25 high school teams, what's happened in the past week. Man, Lincoln Way West had put a pretty big stamp on being number one. They've had some impressive wins, but they had a tough week. They lost 3 games, against some really good teams. But with that, it created some juggling especially towards the top of this Power 25. And Brother Rice is the new number one. They're 15-1 on the year. They are absolutely raking as a team up and down the lineup with older guys, younger guys, kind of everybody's contributing. Last week they went 4-0. They took down Maine South 10-2. They knocked off Lockport 5-4 in a tough game, and then they took 2 games from DePaul College Prep in conference. So that propelled them over Libertyville. Libertyville's sitting at number 2, and they took their first loss of the year, 16-1, I believe, going into the new week, but still really, really high on Libertyville. And then just kind of looking down the list at like other noteworthy teams. I don't think we're going to go through all 25, but just some guys that have made some jumps and stuff. Manuka. Huge week for them. They jumped 3 spots to number 4. They're 15-2. They went 3-1 on the week, but they beat the then number 1 Lincoln Way West 7-0. And Zane Caves was an absolute stud on the mound for them that game. He's a Michigan State commit, 2026 left-hander. I've long talked about him on this podcast. He's a 3-sport athlete. You give him some time coming off the basketball season, and it just seems like it gets better and better and better. So Manuka's got themselves plenty of talent this year, but kind of the arrival or the whatever you want to say about Zane Caves, just kind of making that next step. And he's almost, they've already got Zillis, who's an ace, in himself. But if Caves can kind of turn into that pseudo ace, that secondary ace, they are going to be tough to beat come playoff time. I'm going to look too at just who else they beat that week. They knocked off Plainfield East and Plainfield South in rather convincing fashion. So they are definitely trending the right direction. And then just moving down some other ones that I, had nuggets on. Triad, they jumped 3 spots to number 5, and they're 14-1 overall. They went 3-0 on the week, and I think like almost all of our staff has now seen them play. Like I know Dane has had a couple close recent looks at them. I've seen them. Defaball saw them early in the year. They are really, really good. I mean, I think right now they're kind of that team to beat in Southern Illinois, whether it's 3A, 4A. Like, you got some really good teams down there with Father McGivney, with Edwardsville. O'Fallon is playing good baseball. Belleville East is playing good. Alton is tough. But, like, Triad, to me, they've got the arms, and their lineup is as good as it gets. I think Edwardsville is going to be right there. They went over to the NHSI and played 4 or 5 of the best teams in the country, and they took their lumps. I did not expect that. I thought they would definitely get a win or two. We are not, out on them by any means. But, man, you look at on paper who's done what. Like, Triad has been ultra impressive. They've got Hayden Bernruder, who's been just raking at the plate. Hayden Bugger. Landon Loomis, but man, Keegan Sipe. I know, Dane, you and I were talking about him last night. Like, Keegan Sipe has just been going off for being a sophomore in that lineup. Big physical left-handed hitter, and he's been getting to his power. And then one other team that I had to mention here was Lincoln Way East, because they took probably the biggest jump out of anybody in, honestly, like kind of recent memory. They jumped 13 spots. They were at number 20, and they went up to number 7. And just kind of breaking down what they did and why they jumped so much. They went 4-0 on the week, so they had a perfect week. They are now 13-2 on the year. They also have a left-handed arm that throws 101.8, with one of the best sliders in the class. They've got Jack Tamer, who's an unsigned senior, whose velo has shot up. They've got Cooper Johnson coming up. They've got a number of arms. Like, they just are way more complete than I think we realized coming into the year, and they're playing really good baseball. But they split with Lincoln Way West in a great series, a great two-game series. They beat them 8-7. Um, they also knocked off Montini Catholic 5-3. They took down Bradley Bourbonnais 10-3. And then another huge win for them on that perfect week was beating number 18 Lamont 7-4. And that game actually went like 14 innings. So just a hard fought battle there with Lamont. And yeah, Lincoln Way East, I think from the eye test, we've now seen them multiple times. Looking at what they've done on paper, the teams they've beat, like they all day, I think, deserve to be in that top 10 at that number 7 slot. And honestly, I think there could be an argument that they could be even higher. So those were some teams that I had just right off the rip here in the top 10 that were making some moves. And I know you guys have some as well.
Yeah. Just you mentioned Jack Bauer, and I know we talk about him a lot, but when I was over at the East Peoria Canton game, which I'll get into later, you just hear like rumblings. Hey, Jack Bauer he throws 100. And Connor Essenberg hit a home run off a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, and all this and that, and like everywhere I've gone since this, it's just like that's like the hottest thing in high school baseball, I think, right now, which is just crazy to think about. But yeah, go ahead, Ty or Drew, whatever.
It's even reached non-baseball people, which I think is like the coolest thing. Like at Easter, like I had my uncle, like, who's this kid at Lincoln Way East that throws 100? I'm like, well, it's actually like 102, you know. So it's just really cool how it has it. They say like gone viral or whatever.
Yeah.
But kudos to Jack Bauer. Really, really awesome to see. Something I've never seen in my time doing this. Left-hander throwing over 100 miles an hour in high school. But yeah, what do you got, Tyler?
It was a topic of conversation back in Ohio on Easter as well. My uncle and my cousins were asking about it. So he's certainly made his mark nationally. Because it's even reaching over there in Ohio. So
well, hopefully your cousin's the next one to kind of be talked about and doing it. Because I know he's a talented 2027 that was at the Super Sophomore Games last year for Ohio. What's the name again?
It's Noah Milburn.
Yeah, let's give Noah a shout out for any schools that happen to maybe, come across this podcast. Keep tabs on Noah Milburn. Despite coming from the Defaball family, like that's really the only knock I have on the guy. I think he's a stud. So no, I'm just kidding. It's a huge positive. He's a Defaball. But go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah. I'll get in here. Yeah, I'll get in here.
All right.
So Southern Illinois School, Father McGivney jumps up 2 spots at number 12. They are now 16-2. They went 2-0 on the week. They're a 1A program, and they are seemingly just the best 1A team in the state. They have a really good lineup. I know, Dane, you've seen them, but just looking at the videos from afar, like the guys in that lineup just look like they can really mash. And I mean, we've seen a lot of their guys in the past at events, games, things like that. So they're 6-0 in conference. They're outscoring teams 178-33, and they are currently on a 14-game win streak. So again, another one of those Southern Illinois programs that's probably one of the best in that area, and obviously the state as well, now sitting at number 12. But moving over to Normal Community, they jump up 3 spots to number 13. They had a 14-3 week, or 14-3 on the year. They went 3-0 on the week, and they gave up 1 run in 3 games. So far, they're undefeated in conference, and they're outscoring teams 134-42, and they are on a 13-game win streak. So a team that's really hot here in Central Illinois, and I mean, one team that we've been high on for pretty much the entire year. I know had some kind of struggles early on, but it looks like they're kind of cruising now with some once they get into conference play. But yeah, Normal Community at number 13 now.
Yeah, and then St. Lawrence jumping 3 spots up to number 14. They're on a 9-game win streak right now, and when I saw them was the start of this streak they've been on. They got a big win over Homewood Flossmoor last week, who actually knocked off number 1 Lincoln Way West last week, so that's a good win. And then they also swept St. Ignatius in conference play. So the Vikings are starting to get hot. That's a really good roster over there. So I'm sure we're not done talking about them.
Well, and another team that stays like red hot, that just continues to climb up our board is Fremd. They're 10-0-1. They went 2-0 this week. They took 2 games from Hoffman Estates in very convincing fashion. Like, they just keep doing it. And they're up 4. They're up to 15, and they're a team that I think is just a tough team to beat. So they're going to probably play a lot of close games, and I know they've got some tough games coming up looking at their schedule. But one thing I wanted to mention too, like getting into this Power 25 and things that happened this week in the update is, we've got 2 teams in our top 10 in Edwardsville and Providence Catholic that on paper don't have the best records. And I think that's what makes, deciding and figuring out how to do these rankings really, really tough. Because we've got teams that we've left off here that are 16-1, 12-1, 15-2 in a St. Joe Ogden that they're very, very good. So like, how do we do it? How do we look at it, man? Like, first off, it's hard. I think with Edwardsville, they're at number 9. They beat McCracken County this past week to go 1-0 on the week to push their record to 8-6 on the year. But it's like, you look at a record like 8-6, and you could think, what the heck are they doing, in the top 10? But we mentioned they go up to the NHSI. They play the toughest teams in the country. That really, is putting a tough look on their losses, because if they're any other team in the state, they don't have those 4 losses from those teams. And they're probably sitting, somewhere at like 14-2, or 12-2, something like that. So we are not out on Edwardsville. Like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody, but before the season, looking at them on paper, absolutely loaded. They still are. And then we got to look at them at the Kickoff Classic. And the eye test to me was just as impressive. And I think Providence Catholic is a little bit on the same lines here. I think they're trying to figure some things out with their pitching. But they're 10-5, and they're at number 10 for us. They dropped 4 spots. They went 3-2 on the week. But they're another team where it's like, I am nowhere near ready to jump off the, bandwagon on them. I think just Coach Smith and Coach Funkhauser, they know what's most important. That's getting their team ready for playoff time. They're not worried about exactly how many wins and losses they have. So Providence Catholic 10-5, sitting in our top 10, maybe doesn't look as good as some of the other records, but they've also played some of the best teams in the state and then outside of the state. Like, they had Ballard, Kentucky come up and play them. Couple other tough games here as I'm looking at. They went down and played St. Xavier and Trinity down in Louisville. So sorry to kind of steal the thunder there on teams in the Power 25. I just thought that was kind of important to talk about, Gavin and others. Like, strength of schedule is a huge, huge part of this. And who we, really think from an eye test are the best teams in the state as well.
Well, Drew, I mean, if there's 2 teams in the entire state where you can just throw the record out the window, especially come playoff time, it would quite literally be those 2. So, I mean, because we're also trying to rank, like, we want our rankings to reflect, like, what it's going to be at the end of the year, too, right? You better believe they're going to turn it on come playoff time.
And I think if you look at the past, I don't know, 9 years maybe, I'm trying to think back, maybe the last 10 years, there's probably 6 or 7 of those state titles are either Providence or Edwardsville. So I think they've also earned that right, just via history and what they've done. So I think you're 100% right there, Pete. Like, just know they're going to be one of the toughest teams to knock out come playoff time. And I'm sure both of those records are going to just continue to get better and better as the season goes on.
Yeah, and then 2 more risers in this week's Power 25. Next is Lamont, jumping 2 spots, 3-1 week. I think the biggest thing with Lamont was early on, like the past few updates we've done, they just haven't had a ton of games under their belt. So they're now finally starting to play some games. Obviously, we've touched on the weather. That's a big part of it here in Illinois. So they're 10-3-1. They had a 3-1 week. Honestly, I kind of feel like a factor in them rising was just that game with Lincoln Way East. Like, someone else can hop in here if I'm wrong, but took essentially 2 games for Lincoln Way East to knock off Lamont, right? Going 14 innings. So to us, that was really impressive that they were able to hang for 14 innings. That had to be an awesome game. Drew, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, well, just to add some color to that, we think very highly of Lincoln Way East with them jumping, from 20 to number 7. So, Lamont losing that game and in the fashion that they did, it doesn't hurt them as much as maybe a different loss would have. But then you look at their wins, and they outscored opponents. If my math is correct here, they had 11, 24, and 14. I'm counting 49 runs scored, and they only gave up 2 in their other 3 wins. So, really, really dominant week outside of that game against Lincoln Way East.
No, that's a good shout because they also beat an Evergreen Park team who we'll touch on here in the next segment that's been playing well too. So moving down, Oswego jumping 5 spots up to number 17. Listen, Oswego's just been doing it. They've been winning at an unreal clip, right? They're 15-1, 4-0 week. I saw them down at the Kickoff Classic. Like, there's a lot to like in that lineup. Just a very senior heavy team, and they scored 44 runs in 4 games last week. So they're finding ways to win. The offense is obviously helping carry the load, but man, if you're going to score 44 runs every week, I think you're in good shape. So that's what I got on Oswego. Pete, I'll throw it back over to you.
Sure. We got Downers Grove North here. They're up 3 spots to number 20, and I actually got to look at them over the weekend for a Crosstown Classic with DGS, but they're 15-1 on the week, or on the season, I'm sorry, and they went 4-0 on the week. And they actually scored 66 runs in four games. Tyler, I don't mean to one-up you there, but I mean, I got to look at them. They passed the eye test. It's a totally different team, right? Totally different identity to what they've had in the past with the Walkows and the Janikis and the Warwicks. All those guys are through the doors and gone. Now it's a bunch of other guys now that they've had some time on varsity, but there's also new faces stepping up and some new young arms stepping up as well that I'll get to later. But so yeah, really liked my look at them. And then moving down, Andrew is up 3 spots as well. They're up to number 21 now. They're 14-2. They had a 3-0 week, a good bounce back week to get back on track. And then York, they're entering the Power 25 now. I actually got to look at them yesterday. We're recording on Tuesday. They're at number 22 now. They're 12-1, 13-1 actually, 12-1 at the time we put this in. 2-0 on the week, and all they do is win. I mean, they've made it to state the past 2 years. Like, we didn't give them enough respect. I'll just say, like, they lose Ryan Sloan, who was a big factor into why they made it to state, right? He's gone. So now it's like, all right, well, who do they have? And, I mean, I saw them. It's like all seniors, and they're all very solid players. And so they are one of those teams where, they're not going to make a lot of mistakes, and they pass the eye test as well. So really happy to see them yesterday.
Yeah, and then the last team we want to touch on here in the Power 25, Prairie Ridge entering the Power 25, another Fox Valley team. Listen, the Fox Valley at times kind of cannibalizes itself, I feel like. They're all going to – it's just a very talented conference, and they're all going to beat up on each other throughout the spring. But, man, they had a big week last week. They're 14-3-1. They had a 3-0 week with including a convincing win over Hampshire, who was number 9 at the time. And they scored 30 runs in their 3 games last week. So their offense is finding ways to do it, and they're pitching the ball well, too, at the time. So this week, though, they got a big week. They get Huntley twice, they get Cary Grove, and then they also get Hampshire again. So we'll see. It's the Fox Valley Conference. You never know what's going to happen. But, Prairie Ridge off to a really great start this spring.
Yeah, and then kind of looking over at some of these bubble teams or teams that are off to a pretty good start here. Obviously, every team can't be in the Power 25, but there are still a ton of other teams out there having really good seasons. But just some names here in the Central Illinois area. I'm not going to list off every team. If you look at our Power 25 page at the bottom, we list off a bunch of these teams, but just a few to note: Dunlap's 13-4, Eureka's 16-1, Ottawa Marquette 14-1. We've talked about them quite a bit. Monticello's 14-3. Nashville is 14-0, kind of in that Southern Illinois region. Normal U High is 12-3. Putnam County's 14-2. Teutopolis 14-1. St. Bede's 13-2. St. Joe Ogden's 15-2. So just a bunch of teams in the Central Illinois and some Southern Illinois schools off to really good starts. But what else do you guys got?
Yeah, I'll hop in. Just some teams that were catching my eye in my neck of the woods. Coal City, 14-3. Evergreen Park, I touched on them a little bit earlier, but they're 14-4. Just totally random regarding Evergreen Park, but like we see like pictures of like their stadium, and their field set up there looks absolutely beautiful. So who knows, maybe we'll get out to see them at some point this spring. It looks like a just absolutely fantastic spot to watch a game. Moving down, Geneva 12-4. They've got a couple 2027s that we have our eye on, and to tease, will be included in our 2027 rankings when we drop those. So they're playing well. Grays Lake Central 12-3. Shout out to our guy Coach Whalen over there, doing a great job. And then Palatine 12-4. They've got a couple really good arms there as well, whether it be Toby Peterson, who's going to Kentucky, or Peter Mulhern, who's going to Wisconsin Parkside. So those were just some teams catching my eye.
Yeah, a few more, and then we can move on. Hersey, they're 12-2-1. Highland Park, 11-3-1, and then Lyons Township, like I mentioned earlier, they're 10-2. Mundelein, 12-3-2, a team that's always good. Plainfield Central, off to a good start at 13-3. Rolling Meadows, 14-3. And then rounding it out, we got Warren Township at 12-3, and then West Aurora at 12-1.